Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I'm Meghna,
And I'm Upamanyu.
and we've got a great show planned for you. We're obviously going to be going to talk about the headline topic, which is how Zootopia's Gary the snake is in danger. Um, China loves Zootopia's blue snake, but now fans are buying real ones. We are also going to be talking about how simple anti-trawling structures in Cambodia are helping the seagrass recover. What else do we have on the rosterooms?
We also have a story from Greece where there is a human animal conflict story evolving, but this time it is with tourists and the increased tourism pressure on certain areas. There's another interesting story that I really wanted to talk about, which is how polar bears might be adapting to climate change. We had a guest last time who was talking about corals, some coral species possibly doing the same. And there's another story on polar bears.
Yeah, so the headline story. This
Mm.
is an article which has been doing the rounds, especially on social media, and it has been covered by CNN and other places. The release of Zootopia 2 in China sparked a surge in demand for blue Indonesian pit vipers, inspired by the film's character Gary. Online sales of the venomous snake soared, with prices reaching $420, prompting warnings from legal experts and concerned citizens. E commerce platforms show numerous listings, and sellers advise buyers to purchase protective gear due to the snake's dangerous venom, which can cause significant tissue damage. This trend highlights the film's influence, with one post explaining the real life snake garnering over 10,000 likes and shifting perceptions of reptiles. However, the species isn't currently regulated in China, complicating efforts to control the growing trade. Um,
Um,
yeah,
I think we have done a few stories like this, right? Pet trade and I feel like every week there is a similar story that happens. There is a pattern, and we already knew this, but even in the news cycle, there is a pattern of people really liking exotic pets, and some for some reason wanting to keep exotic animals as pets. Like you know, I don't
yeah,
know
and
what is the thought process. Do you think? Let's start there. I guess.
I think with at least the selfies and the pet trade, you go see a live animal somewhere, or you see these photos or something of an actual animal, and then you have some kind of, I don't know if you would call it craving or if you would call it something else, but you want that animal. In this case, it's honestly beyond my thought process because this has happened before as well with animated movies. And I don't think people understand what animated or animation means because it is not having to depict the real world. It is just having to depict an imaginary world. That is why they use animation, and um, they give these huge big bulbous eyes to all the animals to make them look further cute. Like, if a snake isn't cute in real life, they make sure that the snake is at least cute in the movie. And with Nemo and I think Finding Dory, we saw that people, the search for like blue tanks and clownfishes, they soared because people wanted like a Nemo at their home or a Dory at their home, and it's the same thing happening now with Gary the snake. I'm really happy that the film showed snakes in a positive light, but the consequences that these kind of movies have on the public, I do not know how to balance that out. Like, how do you send that message out saying that this is a movie, keep it where a movie is, and do not correlate it to real life?
But I'm also saying, like, what is like if you had to guess what is our human fascination with exotic animals? Like, kings since hundreds and thousands of years. Everybody has had these exotic animals as like most kings has had some kind of a menagerie of animals, a private zoo, exotic animals mostly. What is this? Where does this fascination come from? I personally don't understand it, but there might be something that we have done this for such a long time, like having exotic animals at our disposal.
I think there are two things. One, obviously, the fascination of something that is not regular or normal. So, like you don't see them in your regular life. So, it's the same thing like when you go for a safari, even though you see deers, like deers are commonplace there. So, people don't really wait. Like, if they ask you in the vehicle that, oh, should I stop? Like, do you want to take photos? Then, after the first few deers, you're like, nah, it's okay, just keep driving. But when you see a tiger, they're like 10 cars or 10 jeeps, and one tiger between them. So I think it's the rarity of something happening, or the rarity of
No,
some
but
species.
you're saying, but you're saying these, like us as a we as a species, we're not content seeing them in their natural habitat. We have to keep it in our home. Like
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. The kings, that's what the kings did, right? Private zoos. Um, Jahangir, one of the Mughal kings of India, he had almost like 500, 600 animals in its zoos. Like he was gifted a zebra once, and then he took immense amount of time to make sure that wasn't a horse just painted, and he wrote the in detail in his diary, which is called Jahangir Nama, about a zebra and how amused he was. And he kept it. He kept multiple zebras in his menagerie. So what is this like? I don't know. Where does this obsession come from? Like, we have to keep it in our house. Like, what is this?
So obviously, even with Jahangir, I feel like it is again something, the liking of something that wasn't normal, right? Because he went ahead and made sure it wasn't a horse that was painted, which means that zebras were rare and people didn't know what zebras actually look like, and if it was a real zebra. So I think it is one of those things, especially with kings, they could afford to collect or keep things that other people couldn't, because they had the resources, they had the
Hmm.
money, they had the power to get all of these animals. I think that was one. Second was obviously power play, because it showed that you had this power over all these animals. Because I guess when we were hunter gatherers and all, like, when you hunted the species that was bigger than you, it was power play. So now when you have like a really exotic and really venomous or really dangerous species as a pet, that's also a power play. Like I feel like all the, in the Middle East, when someone has a pet tiger, a pet lion, or those pet hawks, it's always something that is a predator, or that is a little feisty, that shows that like it has some kind of power. But if you can,
Birds. What about birds?
yeah, like the
Exotic
hawks,
birds.
exactly, like
No,
the
exotic bird. No, no, the parrots and the budgies and the.
that is
Uh,
cuteness. That is cuteness. That is separate. Like with the falcons and the tigers and all, I feel like it's more like, oh, if I can tame this wild beast, then imagine how, like, how important I am or how powerful I am. But with the budgies and all, I think it's one of those. I think with the snake also right now, it's that cute factor because it looked so cute in the film, or those budgies and those lovebirds, whatever they call them, they look so cute. Parrots talk, like you want that whole factor of, oh my god, my pet can talk to me. So it's a combination, I feel, of different factors. Like with kings and all that you're talking about, it was maybe fascination plus power play. But right now with Zootopia's Gary, it's definitely not fascination, it's cuteness, or at least how the snake was depicted in the movie. Like the snake was depicted as an amazingly nice snake. Like, I mean, I think this was, I think they wanted to clear out the image, because how we people always use deceiving people. We always say that person's like a snake, they can, you can never
mm,
trust them. So we always use snake as a negative connotation in real life. Like we never think of
mm,
snakes as just animals that are trying to survive. They're not out there being cunning or thinking of ways to make your life worse. So this movie tried to bring that out, that snakes are also great animals, and this is a snake trying to survive and do this. But seems to have backfired. That is where I feel like, how do you balance it out, that you make a movie but you have to actually try to force individual people or the collective audience that please use your brain. This is a movie, this is not real life.
Mm. Yeah, no, like my intention or my thought process, train of thought with asking that question it was that are we predisposed to this kind of behavior? Like we want exotic animals as our pets. For some reason, are we as humans predisposed to this behavior? Because I cannot fathom why anyone would want, like for me, I cannot fathom why anyone would want otherwise an exotic pet. Might be it might be in a small percentage of us, this predisposition, but um are we predisposed to that? Because I think a lot of the in the pre-industrialized times, there was a lot of barter system and there was a lot of gifting that was happening between kingdoms and things like that. So um, a lot of gifting was done in terms of one king gifting their exotic animal to another king. Like for example, some a king from India would gift a tiger, a king from Africa would gift lions or zebras or whatever um to an Indian king or vice versa. So um I think that lineage or that sort of muscle memory, I don't know, memory is there embedded in us. um that's the only reason I could like, yeah.
I I honestly don't know if it's predisposed in our, what would you say, in our genes. If that's the question, I still feel it's more a social conditioning or conditioning that has happened over time, like the kings and them gifting each other also might be something, because maybe earlier they gifted humans to each other like slaves or concubines or something, and then once that was looked down, then they started gifting animals. We do not know
Hmm.
where the transition happened or why the transition happened. But we do know that we have a liking or a fascination for things that are not easily accessible to us. So even
Hmm.
with the underwater world, we have a lot of fascination for it. Even though we would not know a lot about it, so we have this fascination for the unknown. We have a fascination for something that we cannot actually own. So with and the second thing is that sometimes social media plays a role in such a way that if it clears an image of an animal, whatever animal it be, then people go crazy. Like they would go from being extremely scared to loving it so much that they would want to like hug it, squeeze it, own it, do everything. So they like it, there's no balance between us. Like as humans, I feel like there's no balance. Like it's either pet trade or not caring for the species at all.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think you were quite. As I think more and more about it, I think you. I quite agree with your analysis that it would generally be status or display of wealth or something like that. Even in like thousands of years before social media existed, it was the same reason, and now it's the same reason as well. You just post a picture of your pet on the interwebs, and you garner some likes or you garner some comments, and people are like, "Oh wow, you have this, you have this." Um, you show you're of a different status in the net world or whatever. So I think.
Definitely, that is definitely there. But I feel like with Zootopia's Gary, it is more like people fell in love with the character, and then now they kind of imagine that the snake they're getting home is like that Gary, which makes zero sense because you cannot do a 2+2 in this situation.
Hmm.
That Gary was different. He was an animated character. He was great as an animated character, but he's not real. Real snakes will behave like real snakes. They're not going to be your pets and listen to you, and they're not going to be a dog, they're not going to be a cat. So I don't know why people think that
but
they
but
could be dogs or cats.
but it's very difficult for me to accept that a regular educated person does not have enough cognition to understand the difference between an animation and the real thing.
it's
I
it's
mean,
it's not
if they're
about
spending that much
understanding.
money, they certainly would be some level, they have would have some level of education and whatnot, or awareness of the world. They wouldn't be.
True, but you have to also look at it this way. Like, let's say you were never exposed to clownfish or blue tanks. You did not know anything about them. You didn't know about a lot of fish in the ocean. You didn't even know that there were these cute, cute fish. Um, and then, you see
But
this
I would
heart
just think
wrenching.
then this is something like I would think a cat like Tom or a mouse like Jerry couldn't exist. I would just think if I never know about clownfish or anything like that, I would just think this is like a character that has just been made up for this animated film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it is definitely animated. People know that Tom and Jerry don't exist in real life. That's not how it works. But at the same time, you have to also understand that maybe it fills a void. It also fills something like okay, now I don't have, okay, let's say that I have zero exposure to some animal, and then I go and see on screen that this animal that I have zero idea about can be this cute, this friendly, and this human. Maybe I think the word is human. That is why people go for like these parrots that talk and everything. Something that's closer to us, and then we
Hmm.
feel like, oh, this snake is this amazing. Why was I even scared of snakes? Like, I didn't know that snakes were this friendly. Because in the movie, the snake is always like, that snake is motivating the bunny that you
Right.
can do it, and then the snake is also like, the snake goes like, oh, permission to hug, and then like he hugs her, and then he brings his own family and he says permission to hug, and like the snake is just a really, really sweet, um hopeful character. Like, and I think people just related to how positive that character was. But that's a character that was made up. That is where my problem is, that how can you not dissociate real life and real life? Like, this snake here, that animated snake, has a human voice at the back, and it's just being anthropomorphized. It's an
Hmm.
anthropomorphized version, and the real version has nothing to do with it. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick to actually show, because this sixth tone, this website, it actually shows postings of that snake, and the with the prices and everything. So this is how they're being sold. So they're actually sold on the net with prices, and people are buying them. Even though these snakes are not extremely endangered, but they are on the site's appendix 2, and there is a recommendation for how their pet trade, or their how they're changing hands across the world. So eventually it will cause a problem if people have this kind of demand for it.
Yeah, and look at that. Like this the first post that I can see is like 288 yuans, which is like I think something around $40 US dollars or something like that. 4,000 Indian rupees, something like that. There are a lot costlier ones as well, like 3,000 yuans or 1,600 yuans, but those are not very expensive. Like, you know, of course, if that's the condition of the market, then people are like, yeah, let's go for it. And also, I think I don't know if China follows sites or not, or is China is associated with sites or not, but certainly the species is not regulated in China. So trade in China can happen freely, as far as the authorities are concerned. Um,
Yeah, and I think the
yeah,
problem is because the movie had picked up a blue snake, and this Indonesian pit viper is blue. So people are specifically targeting this blue snake because it's the closest that they can get to Gary. If it was a
hmm,
black snake that was shown in the movie, or if it was a green snake, people would have gone for a green or a red or a black snake, whatever was depicted in the movie. It's only this particular snake because of that particular movie.
yeah, and do we think, like, what do we think about like the responsibility of filmmakers in this whole equation, like the creators of this film, whoever it is, like Pixar or Disney or whoever is the director, I don't know.
I feel like with the filmmakers, the responsibility definitely lies with how you promote the film. So when you're promoting the film, you have
Mm.
to actively, you know how when you go see a movie, there's always this disclaimer saying that no live animals were used for this movie and no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. Similarly, there should be like promotional ads and promotional campaigns saying that this is a movie and take it as a movie and do not go and buy snakes. There should be like active campaigns, active promotional campaigns. There should be whatever, wherever you're promoting the movie, in the starting of the movie, in the ending of the movie, some kind of video, some kind of public message, so that the public doesn't get into this discourse that it is okay to go and
Mm.
do these things. But at the same time, having said that, if you're going to curb art or tell filmmakers that, oh, you cannot make movies like this, that is wrong. Like, you know, art is in its own place and they're allowed
Mm.
to showcase however they want to, and they
Mm.
have some kind of responsibility. But the bigger onus is always on us. And I think we spoke about this example as well, when in India there was a superhero comic called Shaktiman, and there was a series. So Shaktiman would fly and he would save like kids in distress or people in distress. And there was this one very popular episode where this kid jumped off an almirah or a cupboard, and then like Shaktiman swooped in and he saved the kid. So kids across India, whoever like were like big fans, they started jumping off cupboards in the hope that Shaktiman would come and save them. And obviously Shaktiman didn't come, but people probably broke their bones. The children broke their bones. I'm not sure if some children lost their lives, because I remember when we were little, this news became really big, and then there was like Shaktiman had to come on his show and say that do not do these kind of things. But it wasn't his fault, or the fault of the people who did it. It's in our, like, we don't want to realize, like, even in this case, at least that those were children, they didn't think through. But in this case, it's actually adults, like young
Mm.
adults are going for the snake. And the snake is
Mm.
venomous, the snake is poisonous, it can do permanent tissue damage. So I do not understand where that where you're losing your common sense or thought
Mm.
process of not processing that.
Yeah, somewhere along the line there is, and there needs to be that side of things ingrained um, into the messaging as well. I think I quite agree with you. Art should exist just for art, and nothing else. And art should be given that space to exist. And I think overall this movie, I would say, from what I've seen and what I've heard, haven't seen the movie yet, but from what I've seen and heard, and what I've read on the news, it sends a positive message, which in my opinion, is a net good as well, because snakes obviously are. We still have the trauma from our, I guess, savannah days, that we should be aware of and scared of snakes. At that time, it made sense because we had to be aware and we had to be, um, you know, aware of our surroundings. But now it just doesn't. And yeah, snakes are not something to be afraid of. There's a popular YouTube video where these 3 or 4 month, 6 month, or let's say, oh, not even that, like 6 months to a year old babies, they're just placed in a studio, and these huge constrictors are just left with them, and the babies are playing with those constrictors as if they were some kind of toys. They're squishing their heads, they're squishing their tails, and things like that. So I think we are not born with that fear, but as soon as we see an adult, babies are very good at picking up what the adult is doing or how the adult is reacting. As soon as the adult present in that room, or the baby's parents, react in a negative way or in a scared way, the baby will react the same way as well. So we are not born with these fears, but as we
No,
grow up.
there is actually an opposing theory to that as well. Like, there are studies
Mm.
where even apes and monkeys in isolation that have never been ever exposed to snakes, when you've exposed to them or kept like a snake-like object in front of them, they have been scared. So this fear of snakes is something that is actually inbuilt in us. It's something that we've grown with. So when people find snakes icky, a lot of people, like the majority of people, find snakes icky, or when they see the photo, they're like, oh, please don't show me a snake. It's actually something that is inbuilt in us. It's not, it is part maybe
Real?
conditioning, but yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I was doing that whole study for the when during the person's time, then there were these all these papers. So like the fear of snakes is something that is inbuilt. It's
But those
natural for
babies
us.
looked unfazed
There are,
with those
I mean,
snakes.
there are definitely, like, I guess, maybe they were too little to have that fear creep into them, or it was one of those exceptions with those babies. I'm not sure, but that fear is something that is inbuilt in us. Like, I don't know, maybe even with the apes and all, it's different when we're grown up and when we're little.
I think so.
But I do want to ask you this, like, with snakes, do you think they're a head with a really long neck, or do you think it's a really long tail with a head on it?
That is an interesting question. I
Have you seen that cartoon? Wait, let me try to find it.
I would say that they have a neck, a body, and a tail. So that would be my thing. They cannot be a head, neck with a tail, or a tail with a neck, head. Um, yeah, I would say there's a body, there's a whichever part their stomach is in, that's their body. Whichever part their esophagus is in, that's their neck, and whichever part their bone is in, that's their tail.
Wait,
That's what I would say.
I'm just gonna share this cartoon if you haven't seen it before. So
Yeah.
so the snake says, "Why are you wearing a tie on your tail?" And he's like, "Tail, that's my neck. Neck, it's your tail." So then he goes like, "Wait, aren't we heads on a long neck?" He's like, "I thought we were heads on a long tail." And then they go getting all drunk, like, "What in the hell are we?"
um. Yeah. Scientifically, I would say they have a body, neck, and a tail.
Uh, but
But yeah,
but yes,
I
I
mean,
honestly don't know what is the long term solution for something like this. I do not know how much you can inculcate in people with common sense, or something that I feel is lacking in a lot of people, especially with the young adults and Gen Z and the kind of trends they're picking up. I honestly do not
uh,
know.
wasn't Gen Z? I think I was reading an article recently where there was some poll which showed Gen Z are more um you know careful or aware of nature conservation, climate change, and things like that, and they're taking more action, and they're wanting to take more actions to solve those problems.
So,
I thought Gen Z was supposed to be doing that, Greta Thunberg and things like that, people like that.
no, I
Uh,
think Greta comes in the generation after that. She's still quite young. I don't know what the generation after that is called.
mm,
Alpha. I don't know,
yeah,
but whatever that is called. But there are, I think, two subsets in this Gen Z, or the generations that are coming. So some are absolutely oblivious and aloof. So they would not know the simplest of things, and they would not Google or search,
mm,
or they're in trend with a lot of things. So the trends are changing, and every day there's a new reel and there's a new trend. And then there is a section of people who are extremely responsible, and the actions that they take and everything. So I think it's divided into two things. With the generations before that, like the millennials, and everything, we were neither this nor that. We were not extreme in anything. We were just trying to figure out that which side should we belong to. And the generations before that were also like that. So I think right now there's like a polarizing effect.
mm,
And these kind of social media trends, and the picking of social media trends, and how they affect and impact animals, that's kind of grown in the last few years only.
mm, mm. Yeah, I think social media is one of the biggest detractors from conservation and climate change talk, and anything in general. Like anything in some way can be attributed to the mass, you know, yeah, mass effect that social media has creating. Speaking of that, this is also in some way the next story can also be some way linked to social media and its power to make people do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. This is a story from The Guardian, which is headlined Greek Tragedy: The Rare Seals Hiding in Caves to Escape Tourists. Greece is bolstering protections for the endangered Mediterranean monk seal, aiming to revive their populations and habitats. With fewer than 1,000 globally, Greece hosts roughly 500, so half the world's total. The National Marine Park of Alonissos and Northern Sporades, the country's largest marine protected area, is crucial for breeding, restricting access to researchers only. While historical hunting has declined, seals still face threats from fishing gear entanglement, dwindling food sources, pollution, and habitat loss. Growing concern is disturbance from day trippers, prompting increased protection of key areas. Conservation efforts have seen numbers rise from 250 in the 1990s, leading to a reclassification from endangered to vulnerable in 2023. I also like how these, and I think we have talked about these. Where are these numbers coming from? Like, where do these numbers come from? 250, so it's endangered. Now it's 500, so it's vulnerable. Um, is it? Do you think it's researched and seen as like we do for humans that 100 humans can survive well in this 1 square kilometer area or whatever that number is? I'm making up numbers. Is it similar with these animals as well, or is it just randomly someone deciding that 500, that's a round figure, let's call it not
I
endangered
honestly
anymore?
don't know. I don't know how it is done. I don't think it is per the area. Maybe it's like a census, like how humans have a census where people go door to door, or however it is online now to know how many people there
No, no,
are.
I'm saying determining the status. Is it like, okay, this ecosystem needs 500 seals to thrive, now it has reached 600 seals, so that means they're no longer vulnerable or something
I
like that?
I think it's not really the number per area, but I think it's more of, let's say you have 250 and that sounds like a small number, but 500 is double that number, so it looks like a big
So
number.
you're saying we are determining it based on what it sounds like, so that's not research, right?
No, no, no. It is definitely research, but I do not know where those numbers come in. I feel like um from 250 to 500 might not feel like a big number, but then it must be double. So these IUCN, right? So IUCN might have these kind of barriers, or not even barriers, parameters for
Hmm.
how they classify animals, and then they probably have kept these numbers for different animals, so it must have been based on something. It might have been older research or whatever, but there should be some kind of way, because the census and then going back to IUCN, and then IUCN changes that
Yeah.
status, is something that reflects that,
I would.
okay.
Yeah. No, I agree. There would be some numbers, and my imagination or my guess would be that it is based on some kind of metric which says, um, this number is a sustainable number. Basically, there are enough. The gene pool is big enough. The um, breeding pairs are abundant enough, and things like that. That would be my guess, but and also I was, while reading the news piece as well, I was thinking, how um this happens a lot in India, where there is a in forests, there is there's a core zone which is out of bounds for everyone. and then the periphery of the core zone, like zone 2 or zone 3, is accessible by general public like us. And then there are buffer zones and all those things. Marine sanctuaries don't really have that. So anybody can venture into that core zone with their boats, with their noises, and with their food and junk and whatever. And I think that's also the problem, where obviously this area is protected, but I mean, tourists can go. They're not harming the seals, like, they're not killing the seals or fishing for the seals or harpooning them. So obviously they can go, but that leads to other problems for these seals.
I mean, there is a core zone in the ocean as well. I mean, if you the animals that really dive deep and then stay in the deep, they have lesser threats from us. But the ones that surface and are closer to the
No, I'm not saying ocean. I'm saying in a marine protected area. There's a marine reserve, like in a forest reserve, like a land national
yeah,
park
you
has
do
a
not have
core.
yeah
You
yeah.
can't access some places, at least in India. Everywhere else you can, actually. But for marine protected areas, even in India, there's no such thing.
That is true. That is true. That I
So,
agree with. And I think the problem here is it says that there are less than 1,000 of these seals and 500 are found in Greece, and you're
hmm,
still classifying them as vulnerable from endangered. Makes zero sense because 1,000 in itself must be a small number, and if they're concentrated in one place, then they're also susceptible to like let's say if there's some mass disease or there's something that wipes them out, then they're susceptible to that mass wipeout as well. So it
hmm.
makes zero sense for me in my head that you can classify them and put them in vulnerable from endangered. They have the same amount of danger, and 1,000 is still a small number of seals if you compare it to like all other different kind of seal species that we know about.
Yeah, and this is a video posted on the Guardian article as well. Look at how close that boat is to this highly endangered seal. And again, as you said, like 1,000 might sound like a number big enough for a lot of people, but for something we can wipe out so easily, it is not. And you can see all the caves and crevices in the rock formations, that the monk seals are hiding in. Um, so I really wonder that what the government comes up with, because if my first instinct would be to cordon off areas in the sea. I don't know how to achieve that. There might be no way to achieve that, but there might be. You can do like geofencing and stuff, and then Coast Guard can react relatively quickly if someone goes into that geofenced area. But yeah, I don't know how else. In my mind, there's no other way to prevent, because tourists are obviously not causing any direct harm to these seals, but they're causing a lot of indirect harm, which is equally might be worse for these seals.
They do say that there's a strictly guarded island in the National Marine Park, and
Hmm.
their researchers are also only allowed within 3 miles of its shores with permission from the government's Natural Environment and Climate Change Agency. So I think Piperi, the island in that national park,
Hmm.
is definitely protected. So that one island is protected from everything, and where the seals can, I think, be normal. Secondly, I think the thing we were discussing about they say that after decades of conservation efforts, like in 1990s it was 250, and then in 2023 it was changed to 500. I think this is also a way that when people put in a lot of effort and the conservation efforts have shown that okay, the population has doubled, so IUCN
Hmm.
recognizes this as like a win for the people as well. Like otherwise, it's really tiring in conservation to see anything happy and being hopeful. So I think even the little change from endangered to vulnerable is also like a win for people. So everyone who has been
Yeah.
in that process of wanting to protect the monk seal, it's a win for them. So that little change in the status also means that okay, whatever efforts I was making or whatever efforts we were making has some kind of fruit. But
That is actually an interesting way to look at that, because yeah, if that didn't happen, and the conservationists would lose the motivation to maybe to go forward, um, you know, with their day to day jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I think also they do say that there's a national education campaign called Seal Grease, and they're also saying a key seal habitat, the islet of Formicula, has been shielded ahead of the busy summer season by a strict 200-meter no entry zone. So there are steps being taken, but there are other steps also which do not have like any clear indication of what they're doing. So they're saying in October, the Greek PM, Kyriakos Mitsotakis confirmed two large-scale MPAs to go ahead, but these MPAs and the management structure is unclear. So the protected marine protected areas they want to create. So there is definitely more push from the Greeks to save these monk seals. Apart from
mm,
Piperi, there's another place, this islet of Formicula, and they're trying. So there's definitely efforts in the right direction to
mm.
save these seals even from tourism.
Yeah, I think also there is there's always going to be the limitation of you know patrolling these areas. Uh, some islands and funiculars might be highly patrolled if they are recognized as um, you know core protected areas, which I think is very important, as you said. Um, but then neither the seals have the sense of boundaries, nor will the tourists, if the place is not patrolled by wardens or anyone. Then yeah, the tourists will get somehow get into those areas, and they might be completely unaware, unfazed by whatever, and they might say, "Oh, look at this cute seal" and whatnot. Um, and the Greek
Yes.
waters, as you said, as you saw, they're like pristine, and they're very popular in the travelers' discourse as being very pristine and clear, easy to swim in. The Mediterranean waters, they're warm, and things like that. So a lot of people go there just to sit in their yacht or whatever and just enjoy the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think this has actually come in the island of Formicula and other MPAs are starting to form because of this behavior where we as humans again were fascinated. So they say that decades back monk seals used to actually gather on the beaches, but then when they saw a lot of humans, they were not comfortable, they were scared, especially during pupping season, because moms are always really protective about their babies. So they started having, they had the pups in the caves, and then they started staying in those caves. But these caves can also be really hostile, because if there's a violent surf or a violent wave, then the seals can be drowned, they can be smashed against rocks, they can be swept out to sea.
mm, mm,
So they're not very reliable hiding places. And also, what they're saying is that tourists have gone into these caves for photos. They have changed these caves, and what happens is when the pups are really scared when they see a human, they're not sure of, if it's a predator or not. Then those little pups waiting for their mums, they abandon the cave, and then the mums can't find them. So with seals, as we all know, or if we did not know, once with when the seals are a little older or a couple of days, then the mums actually go hunting, and then they come back, and
mm,
then they nurse the seal. So the mom has to feed herself, and then she has to come back and feed the baby. So the pups are sometimes left alone for a couple of hours, and that is when I think when the tourists enter these kind of caves, it puts a lot of pressure on those little pups, and it's causing that problem. So which is why you need that kind of protection so the seals don't feel that human pressure, especially during
mm.
pupping season.
Yeah. This is a chart from IC, which I think is a Greek agency for these kinds of protections and coming up with these measures and things like that. So they're proposing around Formicula these three zones, where first zone is the regulated access zone, where this is the passageway to access this formula. Then there's the restricted zone that nobody can go in, no swimming, no entry, no boats, and then regulated passage zone. All three of them, there's no anchoring or no speakers, less than 4 knots, 30 meters from seals, and you know, yeah. So I'm imagining this is what is happening there. People are taking their yachts, they're blasting music in the open ocean, they're anchoring them, having a swim around, and they're just chilling in the deck of their yachts. So that's pretty much what I think is happening
Yeah,
in
I think
these areas.
there's this a marine biologist called Joan Gonsalvo from the 2’s
Mm,
Research Institute, and he has said that he went to study the animals, but instead of that, he found himself recording humans chasing seals. And on two
mm,
occasions, people entered these breeding caves, causing the separation of the mothers from pups. And in both the cases, the pups disappeared. And one day in August 2024, he says he recorded more than 50 boats around the islet's tiny
wow.
shoreline. So nowadays, they're lucky if they see only one or two individual seals, which is why I think Formicula has come on the map and they're looking to protect it. Because Formicula was also not known as much as its better known neighbors, which were Meganisi and Cephalonia. So they were more touristy, but Formicula wasn't as touristy, and so it wasn't on the radar so far. But now it is on the radar, so they're trying to protect the monk seals. And the monk seals are also really important to the Greeks because of their culture. They seem that these seals were once thought to have been under the protection of the mythical gods Poseidon and Apollo. So they have a
Mm,
special place in the Greek future, which means that the Greeks are more, inclined to save these species because it's part of their culture that they've grown up with.
that actually is a good thing in, at least in my books, is that if you're attached to something, culturally, religiously, or whatever, then you're more likely to be, wanting to save that species, um, and things like that. That always happens. But I think the government there is taking steps in the right direction. There seems to be a lot of conservationists, be it IC or Tethys Foundation, and whatever else we uncovered during the read of this article. They are taking those measures to protect those areas. I think it's also relatively early intervention. The problem has been identified, and there is already efforts to solve it. So I think this is going to end in a good resolution of this situation. That is my feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I think the government is taking active efforts, and they've come up with a plan, and
Mm-hmm.
there are other plans of saving more places. So I think these seals will definitely fare better, and their population will grow further.
Mm.
The main thing is obviously again educating the tourists to be better with these animals. This is just like the Zootopia story, like where you have to have these active campaigns to put common sense into people, which is really tiring, I think, when it comes to conservation, because people don't want to understand what is okay and what is not okay.
Do you know what
So,
I think? People do understand, but they choose not to follow it anyway.
but I mean, how is that even possible? Like, if you understand, then why would you not go through with it? Like, if I understand that, okay, if I do this thing, this animal is going to be in danger, or I'm going to be hurting this animal, then we have to take an active effort to not do such a thing, right? Like that, the choice lies with us.
You would think one would think that, but I think it is very much a deliberate. Like, why else would these tourists be chasing seals or whoever comes in there? I mean, they say tourists, but they must be aware. I mean, if they're right, I don't know. Either they're uneducated and whatever, they have no common sense, or they just want to, get closer and closer and closer. So
Or maybe it could also be this thing where there is seal swimming in a lot of places across the world, but these seal swimmings where it happens, the seals are not endangered, they're not vulnerable, they're not
Mm,
threatened. They actually want to come and swim with the with the humans, the seals and the sea lions. It's mostly the sea lions, but
mm,
in those places, the tourism is regulated, the experiences are regulated. The people who are in the water with the seals want them in the water with them at that time. They come and play around. So it could also be possible that people have come from other places where it was normal, and then they've come to these places, and they're like, oh, you see a seal, so you start chasing it. But all seals are different, and all seals and sea lions are different. Every experience is different, every place is different, the regulations are different where you swim with them. So unless it is an
mm,
ethical experience, it's something where the government has advised, or if there's a actual travel agency or a ethical tourism agency that's taking you, don't get into these kind of experiences. Like, ethical tourism with marine species is very important. And I think with a lot of species, we find a lot of unethical and illegal practices happening. But do your research and only go with ethical providers, or at least do your research and then have those interactions based on what you research, and the conditions that prevail there.
that is actually very good advice. That is actually very good advice. Um, cool. Should we move on to the next one then?
Yes, so I think we can take a small breather and cover one of the discovered species, and then we can come back
Mhm.
to the serious topics again.
Yes.
But okay, so let me cover one of the species. Um, there are We have a couple of different ones, but okay, so new uh, catfish species has been discovered in southwest China's mountainous region. A new catfish species, Glaridoglanus verusiloba espinov, has been discovered in the mountainous Zayul County of southwest China's Zhejiang Autonomous Region. Identified by a joint research team, the sternine catfish is distinguished by its large lower lip and unique verruciform lobes. Initially misidentified as G. andersoni, detailed analysis confirmed it as a previously unknown species, the third of the Glaridoglanus genus. Specimens were collected from the Zia River in April. This discovery, published in Zoo offers crucial insights into fish diversity and evolution within the Himalayan region, aiding
Mm,
understanding of freshwater fish origins and adaptive evolution along the southeastern Himalayas. It contributes significantly to biodiversity knowledge in this area.
that is such a cool discovery.
Yes, and I'm just going to be sharing the image really quickly. Just give me 1 second. There you go. Wait. Yeah. Let me go down on this. So this is the image. It is a representative image. So yes, but this is the image of the
I don't
catfish.
think the
Um,
actual actual catfish species might not have been um captured in high resolution yet. That would be my guess. Um, I can try and find some images from the Zuki's article itself. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah,
I'm also just trying to
there
see
you
if there
go.
is. No, I don't. I don't think you found it.
Yeah, I'll just quickly share this. This is the catfish. This is from the Zuki's article itself. Um, and yeah, you can see how the longer lower lip and things like that. Um, yeah,
Yep. Oh,
again,
great! You
devoid of
found the
color
actual.
and yeah, this is from the research article.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, very small though. This is if this is 20 millimeter, then yeah, um, yeah. Devoid of
Okay.
color as well. I think it lives in caves. Did you say?
No, no. I think in general catfish are not colorful. Like, I mean, the representation
Hmm.
image was a little off because it showed a lot of color, but I mean, the catfish that we have also seen generally are grayish, like in general.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think it
Cool.
makes sense that this catfish is also similar colored.
Yeah. Cool discovery though.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's a thing with predators as well. Like the bigger predatory fish, I think catfish are predatory, are less colorful, like sharks and all.
Hmm.
They have lesser colors. But the
Yeah. I
smaller
mean,
ones,
catfish
the
are a kind of sharks.
kind of sharks. I mean, I know they're predators, but I don't know if you'd put them in the same category as sharks. Mm,
I think so. But anyway,
okay. What do you want to take up? Oops.
um, cool. Let us do the. We can quickly do another species, and then you can talk about your next topic. Um,
Yep.
this is again a report from the Indian Express. 21 million year old sea cow species discovered in Qatar's Dugong cemetery. A remarkable fossil discovery in the Al Mazhabia desert of Qatar has revealed a 21 million year old marine bone bed, one of the richest in the world. Initially mistaken for reptile fossils, re examination by scientists from Smithsonian and Qatar museums uncovered remains of sea cows, sharks, dolphins, turkeys, and a newly identified sea cow species, Salvarsiren qatarensis. Named after Qatar, this ancient sea cow resembled modern dugongs but was smaller, with distinct skeletal features, including preserved hind limbs. The site, once a shallow sea, provides invaluable insight into prehistoric marine life and environmental shifts. Researchers believe studying these fossils can help predict how current marine ecosystems will react to climate change and warming waters. Yeah, again, these kinds of discoveries, one might say, why do we need fossil discoveries? Or, as we have many a times covered, why do we need to discover species which are already extinct from museum specimens or whatever? This is the reason. This is the reason why. And I think our last guest on the show also told us, shared with us, that there has been technically a time in the late Pleistocene where it was exactly warming at a comparable rate. The Earth was warming at a comparable rate to today's warming. And I think those kinds of comparisons and those kinds of studies can help us predict how things are going to react to this kind of changes and how should we be prepared. So very cool discovery.
Definitely. Um, okay, so moving on, we have our next topic, which was about Cambodia and the seabeds. Um, So, a seafloor survey in Cambodia finds simple anti trawling blocks help seagrass recover. A new study details Cambodia's coastal habitats, revealing a 39% seagrass loss in Kampot province over the last decade, primarily due to destructive fishing practices and coastal development. Researchers from Marine Conservation Cambodia mapped 62,146 hectares, documenting seagrass, corals, and sediment types across four key areas. However, the Kep Marine Fisheries Management Area shows promising seagrass recovery near anti trawling structures benefiting local fishers. The study, published in Frontiers in Marine Science, emphasizes the urgent need for conservation. Notably, the research doesn't assess the potential impact of the planned $1.7 billion Punon Teco canal, raising concerns given its proximity to the protected area. The findings underscore the vulnerability of Cambodian coastal ecosystems to both immediate and long term pressure. Um, I think there are two things here. One is obviously the positive news, where these anti-trawling blocks, simple anti-trawling blocks have helped the seagrass recover. But also they've talked about the impact of a planned $1.7 billion canal project, which is very close to the protected areas. So the seagrass that's recovering may not recover or
Mm.
may face further impact. So there are like two things where there's positive and negative news in the same news article.
I'm quite curious as to how these blocks actually work, but seems like these blocks actually are working, and it's very good news, as you said, to make sure that the trolling efforts are being you know discouraged. But yeah, I think also because the blocks are must be made out of concrete for some.
Yeah,
I'm
it
I'm pretty
is.
sure
I've just shared it on
they
my screen. So this is how the
they
concrete
would.
structures look. And they put the
Mm,
concrete structures around, and this basically is an obstruction. So trawling, as we know, is something that it drags across the seabed. So if there's any structure that it cannot drag, then it would be stopped by the structure. So it's a very simple way to stop trawling practices by putting these
mm,
structures that it cannot really pick off from the ground, or it cannot really push. So then it puts
mm,
a stop to the trawling activities there. The locals are already suffering because of all the overfishing that is going on. So these are the structures, and there's also another image in the article where they're taking these structures down. So they're loading the structures onto this raft, kind of onto a raft, and then they're going to take those structures down underneath, and then they're going to keep these structures. So if you keep these structures every couple of probably 100 meters, then it automatically would be non-conducive to trawling.
mm. I don't know. It makes me quite sad to think that um, these structures has have to be the one to prevent trolling, and regulation isn't enough.
um
Like brute force is the only way.
yeah, I mean, I do not know how, it's also different governments, and the how the policies are implemented and how they're executed, and if the people actually follow. There are a lot of
Mm,
things with different governments across the world also, right? This is a photo where it actually says the livelihoods of many Kep residents hinges on the preservation of the marine resources. So the Kep marine protected
right.
area is actually very important because these their livelihoods are being depleted due to overfishing and large scale coastal development projects. So it's always the poor people, or the ones that do the least harm to the environment, that suffer the most, because they're just trying to survive, but the trawlers are trying to make like a huge profit. And all the development projects, whoever is coming up with the development projects, they make a huge profit. So I mean, the canal itself is a $1.7 billion project. So it's a huge project, and
Mm,
it may have positive effects, but in for the people where the canal goes through, but for the locals that thrive on that protected area, and for the animals that stay in those protected areas, it's not so great.
true, true. I think the grassroots people are the ones often that are most impacted, as you said, and yeah, but, like enforcement or not, you know, uh, yeah, these brute force. I do think this is an ingenious method, very simple to execute, very low cost, and very simple overall. These blocks, it's very easy to deploy and things like that, and very ingenious method to you know discourage the trawlers and the mass fishing from happening. But as I said, like it's also sad that it has to come to that to stop. Similar case with poachers, and all the other
Yeah,
kinds of
yeah.
activities that we do.
It is
Um,
it we have to go
but
to those extreme, like, I think we spoke about this a few episodes back, where rhino dehorning has finally put the poachers to rest,
correct.
because now the rhinos don't have horns, so the poachers are not coming for the rhinos. But it's sad because the rhinos need their horns because it's an integral part of their body. So we have to go to those
Mm,
extreme measures to actually inhibit anything that's wrong. So even in this, they call these concrete structures as fisheries productivity structures.
mm,
And Cambodia had to come up with these, because I think there has to be some way to battle the trawling. But we were also discussing, and this is a discussion question that we have with this article, which is that should anti-trawling structures be applied on a global scale for ocean recovery? And I think me and Ubs both agree. I think that if it is something as simple as just putting concrete structures underwater for a few hundred meters wherever trawling happens, if that can deter trawling, especially wherever illegal trawling happens, and even legal trawling, if it can be a way of deterring trawling or reducing trawling, then this is a great first step. And this should be something that should be implemented worldwide, so that trawling comes to a stop, because trawling is actually the major cause of overfishing. It
mm.
literally just drags everything across the seabed, has the highest level of marine bycatch that goes to waste. So there needs to be more sustainable fishing practices, and if it comes to, like, fighting against these kind of practices by putting concrete structures, then so be it. I think we need to get to that level now.
Yeah, I think how people troll illegally. Organizations. I'm sure quite capable. They're quite capable organizations like Sea Shepherd and things. Organizations like that. They should just go around throwing these concrete structures into those highly trolled areas. If this to me, Cambodia has come up with it. So hats off to the people who have come up with this. But this to me is a very ingenious, low cost, easy to deploy. It checks basically all the boxes. It's like a win-win-win situation for the conservationists, for the ocean, for the people actually building and laying these structures. It's yeah, it's a for the government. It's low cost for or whoever is sponsoring the um, you know, laying of these structures. So it's a win-win-win-win situation. Yeah, every direction it's a win.
Yeah, I think this is actually the Marine Conservation Cambodia that is doing this, um, and it's planning to actually take these and deploy thousands more in 25 other coastal communities, because a lot of these locations,
Mm,
around 70% of the seabeds have shrank, and so the overall cost, like
mm,
the fish catch has fallen by 60%, which means the locals are the ones that are obviously facing this issue, where they do not have enough catch, and they do not have enough to feed, enough to sell, enough to survive. So these structures are so easy, and they deter the illegal trawling and the trawling, and they snag the trawl nets into these structures. So it's a great initiative to bounce back the seagrass, bounce back the species that all survive on the seagrass, all the fish, and then eventually a positive story for the community. So I think Marine Conservation Cambodia is just doing a great job. But it
mm.
shouldn't be just Marine Conservation Cambodia. If this news can become viral enough, and this news can become big enough, that it's such it's just a cheap indigenous alternative for just stopping trawling, then this should be everywhere. Just deployed everywhere that it can be deployed.
Correct. I quite agree with that statement. I quite agree with that statement. But I think there is another part to this news that you also wanted to talk about, Meghna.
Yeah, the study hasn't addressed future coastal development projects, such as the ongoing Funan Techno Canal project, scheduled to be completed by 2028, which may again affect seagrass recovery or potentially reverse the recent gains. So China and Cambodia have agreed to build the $1.7 billion 180 kilometers or 112 miles canal linking the Mekong River in Cambodia to the Gulf of Thailand via Kep province. Cambodia promotes it as a way to
Mm.
reduce reliance on Vietnamese ports, while Vietnam fears it could divert Mekong water flows and harm downstream farmlands. More locally, the canal is said to meet the sea roughly 2.5 kilometers from the northeastern border of the Kep MFMA, which is the marine protected area, meaning the area is likely to be significantly impacted by the dredging during construction and increased marine
Mm.
traffic once the canal is open. And because the canal is a sensitive topic in Cambodia with positive implications for coastal hydrology, sedimentation, and fisheries, Mongawe has asked the study's authors and several external experts how such a project could influence the recovery documented in Kep and Kampot. But I think the authors have not had any answers so far. So we do not know what it could mean, but we all know that development and anything this scale, like a 180-kilometer project, it would not go without having its own impact. And this is only to bypass Vietnamese ports and nothing else. So
Mm.
and this is, I think, where it gets really sad, that when where countries have to fight over each other, and then they start making new structures and making new bonds and making new things, and that may economically help a country, but in the long term or the long picture, it always impacts the locals, the poor people, and the animals that are dependent on those ecosystems, like the marine ecosystem here.
Mm. True. Yeah, as you said, like this has to be political. This has to be an economic decision. Canals, especially, are notorious for because you're diverting the natural flow of a river or a body. Canals historically as well have been notorious for changing entire ecosystems and changing entire relationships between different species in that ecosystem. So um, this, from the sounds of it, and from like again from the sounds of how much money it is going into it, it will be very difficult to stop. I don't think anyone who has that kind of money to fund this project will be stopped by anything on this you know on this scale. And secondly, if this is set in motion, then there's no way this is not having a huge net negative impact on the ecosystems and the local communities that it is touching.
Yeah, and I feel like these kind of big projects that happen between countries, they don't really take research, or they don't take this into account of how it would affect the ecosystem, or how it would affect the land
Mm,
or the water, or the
mm,
animals. Them. It is more about how can it impact economically, or make trade better, or make relationships better, or make something else better, but it is at some cost, and that cost is never taken into picture. So even here, where
mm,
Vietnamese has those fears, their fears are two ways. One, obviously, because their ports are being bypassed, but secondly, obviously, when the water is being diverted somewhere else, it would create bigger catastrophic problems for them and their people as well. So at this point of time, I feel like even though the project is going to go forward, I don't think that the risks and the benefits and the consequences, like whatever would go wrong with this, that has not been analyzed, and that would not come into picture, or people would not know how much it is affecting till the canal is not made and the water is not diverted, and they do not see the negative impacts of it. But this is the sad part with like bigger development projects like this. The negative impacts are never studied fully.
mm. Yeah, I think that is put quite correctly. Yeah. Um, and like again, as I said, like this big of a project, almost $2 billion is being invested by Funan Teco Canal. Um, you know, yeah, I don't think people with that kind of money are listening to anybody telling them that what they're doing is not right. They're just wanting to spend that money, and they've made up their minds, and nothing will change their minds. Yeah.
And I think this is where it gets sad, because there is already a structure in place. the structure that is already being used, that structure can be used at whatever cost it costs, like, because you're going through Vietnam, you have to have a good relationship with Vietnam. But and then, from there to China, that can be managed if, if you want to keep good diplomatic relations, and if you want to actually prioritize saving your coastal communities and prioritizing marine conservation. But the sad part is, when it comes to economic development and money for the
It's very
government, then
difficult.
all of these are on the back burner. Like, I feel as a species, I mean, we run after everything that is development and money and power, but at the end of the day, we don't realize that the sustenance, like the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, we need that, and we don't want that air, or we don't want that food. Like, we're okay letting go of all of that in the name of money and development.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, true. I think economic political clout is also something, and there must be some deep ingrained politics involved, which we'll not go into, but I can certainly imagine there being some very, intricate politics at play here, um, as
Yeah,
well.
so we do not know what the canal is going to do. We do not know the impacts. We do know that there is a solution, at least for coastal communities where the canal is not affecting, a simple way for trawling to be put at rest. We're hoping that those anti-trawling structures become popular enough to be applied everywhere across the world, and eventually trawling comes to a close, and there are more sustainable fishing practices, because that is good for the ocean, but it is also good for us, because if the ocean
Mm,
recovers, you have more food on your plate. Like, if you're actually a seafood person, you would want to support anti-trawling efforts, you would want to support anti huge development projects like this canal efforts. So we do
mm,
not know if there's any way to stop the canal project from going ahead, but at least we're hoping that the anti-trawling blocks are just everywhere.
mm, mm. Um, cool, cool. That is a good thought to end this topic with. The next one that I definitely wanted to cover is this article from the Guardian, which is titled "Changes to Polar Bear DNA Could Help Them Adapt to Global Heating." A study has found. A new study reveals genetic changes in polar bears that may help them adapt to warming climates, offering glimmer of hope amidst a dire forecast. Researchers at the University of East Anglia found differing gene activity in polar bears from southeast Greenland compared to those in the north, specifically in the genes linked to heat stress, aging, and metabolism. Analyzing jumping genes, mobile genome pieces, they discovered a correlation between rising temperatures and increased gene activity in the warmer region. This suggests that the bears are genetically adjusting to their environment. However, despite these potential adaptation, the overall polar bear population is still projected to decline by two-thirds by 2050 due to continued global heating and habitat loss. I think this goes without saying that animals at the poles are most impacted, directly impacted, first impacted by the global warming phenomena.
Definitely, and I think this is something where, Jessica, who came last week, the guest we had last week, she had spoken about how the corals are also trying to adapt, and even though they're growing like linear structures instead of thickening structures, she spoke about how they're still very weak. So I think similarly in this case, or in this article, they're talking about how some of the polar bears are adapting to their changing environment, and they're trying to adjust to this changing environment with a jumping gene, but they do not know how much of this potential adaptation is effective and how many polar bears this might actually impact, and how many polar
Mm.
bears would be able to survive. Because despite this adaptation, they're saying two-thirds of the population will still be lost by 2050. So this adaptation is not fast enough. Secondly, we do not know the ill effects of such an adaptation. We do not know how many polar bears would be able to adapt. We do not know if it is a good thing for that adaptation to happen. And we also
Mm.
know that a lot of polar bears wouldn't exist because most polar bears might not be able to adapt.
Yeah, and what we kind of do know is that a significant evolution, unless we are totally wrong about what we know about evolution and evolution theory, that a significant evolution would take significantly longer time, at least for a bigger animal with longer gestation periods and longer reproductive cycles as a polar bear, to happen. You know, and evolution happening might be far fetched. Um, Again,
It
we
might
might
not
get
be
surprised.
far-fetched.
We might be surprised.
Yeah, I just think with evolution it is something that keeps happening, but with evolution it has to be slow. Like the kind of climate warming that is
Mm,
happening and the pace at which it's happening, it's hard for bodies to evolve or adapt at that space. Even for us as
mm,
humans, like we developed really slowly, we evolved really slowly, and then now we don't need our wisdom teeth or we don't need our appendix. But it didn't happen overnight, or it didn't happen over like just a few decades, or like just 100 years, that now we started eating this food, so we do not need our wisdom teeth or we do not need our appendix. So and we still have those organs. I mean, despite not needing them, we still grow them. So which means that our body is adapting, but it's not adapting to a level where we can completely let go of these things and our body knows that we don't need them. So the adaptation is also really slow. Like it takes like thousands of years for like actual evolution to happen. So this might
mm,
be one of those shock changes, like like the polar bears or the corals are trying to adapt really quickly, like because they're when we have that in train in our DNA, or in most of the DNA, where it tries to adapt as much as it can,
mm.
but we do not know how quickly and how good that adaptation is, right?
Yeah, I like. Thankfully, polar bears these what they're terming jumping genes, which are mobile pieces of the genome, which can move depending on a certain number of factors. I would imagine. Again, I don't know in detail about this, and the scientist who has done this research will be able to tell us more about this. We might try and get them on the show, um, but we'll definitely try that. But um, it is a positive news in the sense like that this is happening. But I think I still remain quite relatively pessimistic on the notion that um, every time in the Earth's history that this kind of a huge shift has happened, um, Earth has basically wiped the slate clean and started with a completely new, a clean slate, as one would call it. Um,
Yeah, but it is also obviously some, it's some kind of hope, because with the polar bears, we have seen those really distressing photos of really thin polar bears not able to adjust. We have seen
mm,
those photos of polar bears that are like like stuck on an ice floe, or in places where they're not able to cross certain regions because the ice is breaking faster and it's warmer. So in that
mm,
way, it's really great that the DNA is developing fast enough for them to adapt to warmer weather. We do not know what that means for the polar bears in the future, or what it even means for them now. We do not even know if that means that they're
mm,
going to come farther south to try to survive.
mm.
But there is some glimmer of hope that if the animals are able to adapt, then they might be able to thrive.
That's what we are hoping for, because I think the pressures on polar bears is not largely the main pressure on the polar bear population is not from hunting or not from encroachment. It is from global warming, which is not an issue that can be solved locally or by enforcing local regulations or by a solution which is as simple as putting concrete blocks in the ocean. There is no solution like that for global warming. It has to be a coordinated and agreed upon effort by the entire globe, which not only include countries which run a democratic form of government, it also includes countries which run a dictatorial, autocratic, or a communist form of government. Some very powerful countries with nuclear powers. So yeah, I,
Yeah, and I
I
think one
think
of the
this is the only hope we can kind of stick on to. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, there's actually one really interesting thing that they've written in the article. They said
Mm,
that there was some interesting DNA changes, such as in areas linked to fat processing as well, that could
yeah, I
help
read
polar
that.
bears
Yeah.
survive. Yeah, they're saying bears in the warmer regions had more rough plant-based diets compared with the fatty seal-based diets of the northern bears, and the DNA of the southeastern bears seem to be adapting to this. And what they've said is that DNA sequences in animals definitely change over time, but when there are stresses like environmental stresses, such as rapidly heating climate, this process can be accelerated. So in the bears, it is accelerated right now, and the bears in the warmer regions of Greenland, the warmest regions, have these genes. These mobile jumping genes are higher and more active in them than in the colder areas, which means that
Mm,
the bears are really trying to adapt. The corals are really trying to adapt. Everything is trying to adapt at its pace. Which is great to know that everything is trying to adapt, but we do not know how much they would be able to adapt, because we are not able to adapt to the climate change and the warming climate. Humans are
mm,
already at their, I wouldn't say at their wits end, but we are being pulled thin. We're being stretched thin by trying to find a solution for it. So
mm,
we're surviving, or we're also struggling with the extreme temperatures on our livelihoods. But these animals are also trying that hard to adapt. So we do not know what it means for the future of these polar bears, because I don't think they were ever meant to have like a more or a higher plant-based diet frequency, but now they do have, and they're trying to adapt to that. So we do not know if that would mean that they're going to have a different polar bear species, or they're just going to look different and they're going to behave different. We do not know what the future holds, but we do know that they're trying really hard to survive.
yeah, yeah. I really hope because that would be the first things to go if the poles becomes ice free and the polar bears are adapting as they say they're adapting, and it becomes warmer and warmer, the polar bears might not remain white anymore, which is the most beautiful thing. Everyone thinks about polar bears and they see the white fur. I really hope the evolution doesn't do anything to that, but it
I
will
think
inevitably, because in a warmer place you need darker fur. Um,
exactly. I mean, the white fur is actually camouflaging in the ice, and it helps them hunt because they blend with the white, just like the Arctic foxes. But if it's not all white, then there would definitely be a change in their skin and color. Otherwise, they would differ, or they would stand out.
mm.
So we honestly do not know what it means for the bears, but
I mean,
it's
polar bear
significant.
skin is black. The
Oh yeah,
skin
the
of a polar
fur.
bear is the fur is white. So yeah, a black bear. We already have black bears, so I don't know if we need more black bears in the poles. But I don't know if that's the only way, and that means the polar bears can survive. Um, like obviously the first preference is that we reach that consensus to reduce fossil fuels, to which doesn't seem like happening. We are mining for more as we speak. um we try to reduce climate change, sorry, the global warming, and keep it in that 1.5 degrees or 1 degree target that we have set as as a planet. But I don't know. I am very pessimistic. I don't know. Meghna, oh, yeah.
No, no, I'm pessimistic as well, just because 2050 is not very far away, and if two-thirds of the polar bears are going to not survive till then, and the one-third have to race against time to adapt successfully, we as a species would have failed. Not just the
Mm,
animals, but we would have failed ourselves, because if the poles are melting, the water is rising, and that would mean wiping out a lot of areas, and climate refugees would become, like a climate polar bear refugees would be there, but there would be climate human refugees, there'd be climate refugees
mm,
everywhere, and that would be a newer problem. And there would be this chaos with, if all the glaciers are melting, where are we going to get our fresh water from? So I think water is going to be World War III. That's what they keep saying, that World War III is going to be all about water.
mm, mm. Yeah, true. A lot of these coastal island nation. I live in an island nation right now, so you know, very, very possible that this island nation might cease to exist uh in a few years. Very scary, but yet very, very possible. Quite, I would even go so far as to say probable. Um, you know, by the 2050 mark.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I think the sad part with climate change and global warming is it is in your face. You can see it. I mean, I think we were discussing just today, me and Oops, like in New Zealand, it's snowing in the southern island. It's supposed to be summer there, but they're having a white
mm,
Christmas. The snow forecast for the ski fields has been better than even June this year. So, like in December, they have a better forecast for snow in the skiing fields, which is really surprising, because this is supposed to be their warmer months. Like this is proper summer for them. So we
yeah, this
can
is
see
peak
that.
summer.
Yeah, and so it's completely reversing. Everything is going haywire. Everything is different. Even places like that used to have different weather patterns, everything is changing. So it is in our face. We just have to acknowledge it and then make steps for it, so that the polar bears and the corals and everything else that is threatened and accelerating its changes don't have to accelerate at that speed, and then don't have to go through those changes and just try to survive somehow.
Mm. And to everyone who is thinking that, isn't aren't we supposed to feel warmer rather than colder? Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Global warming is a phenomena which hampers and interrupts the natural patterns of flow of seasons, and it yeah, it doesn't have to be warm all the time, as it doesn't have to be cold all the time. So it just hampers with the natural flow. And when the natural flow of seasons is hampered, all the animals that have fine tuned their life cycle to those seasons and depend on those changing seasons to a great extent, their whole pattern is changed and uprooted. And yeah, it's very difficult for the animals to adapt. It would be very difficult if we were living in the African savannah still, and we didn't have all these technology of climate controlling our homes and cars and office buildings and things like that. We would be facing the same plight as well.
Yes. um yeah, so we're just hoping that, even though it's a positive story, knowing that polar bears are trying their best, and that and it's really interesting to know that DNAs can change this quickly and
Mm,
accelerate, to have these jumping genes and adapt to warmer climates. We're still hoping that, as a race, as a species, we can collectively come together and
mm-hmm.
save this earth from completely destroying itself, from us destroying ourselves completely. Um, but time will tell, and we'll see. We'll see what's in store for the polar bears, what's in store for us. But I think we can switch to the next topic. Oops.
Yeah. Um, what do you want to talk about? We have covered all our main topics. We can pick up. This is one of those episodes we have still time left, so we can pick up one of the other ones. I think the Javan rhino shift is an interesting one. Do you want to cover that one. Um,
I can cover that. Do you want to cover? I want to cover the new highway as well, the wildlife safe
oh,
highway.
yes, yes. Let's do that. Let's do that then. Let's do that. Let's do that first.
Okay. So NHAI, which is the National Highways Authority in India, introduces India's first wildlife safe road with tabletop red marking on NH 45 through Madhya Pradesh forest corridor. India's National Highways Authority has launched a pioneering wildlife safety initiative on National Highway 45 in Madhya Pradesh. The project features innovative tabletop red road markings, slightly raised red checkered patterns across an 11.96-kilometer stretch near the Virangana Durgavati Tiger Reserve and Nora Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary. Designed to reduce animal vehicle collisions, the markings naturally encourage drivers to slow down without harsh braking. Unlike traditional speed breakers, the highly visible red color also alerts motorists to wildlife zones. This stretch of the highway frequently sees crossings by tigers, deer, and other animals. Alongside the markings, 25 wildlife underpasses have also been constructed, offering safe passage for animals. This initiative is viewed as a potential nationwide model for wildlife friendly infrastructure. And I'll just share
I
that.
have shared the image. You can keep sharing as well.
Yeah, so this is how it's looking. So these red markings are slightly elevated, which means that cars cannot go completely fast. They will have to slow down a little bit because it'll be a little bumpy, or it'll not be all smooth. So this would naturally encourage people to go slower. Also, wherever it is red, it means that this is highly crossable, or high animal crossing area. So which means that you have to be slower to make sure that any animal that's crossing, that it gets its right of way first. So I think the initiative is great. We do not know the effectivity until we see how people are actually behaving, if they're slowing down and following these red markings, or if they're still trying to like just drive brashly on this. People need to understand that this road is going through not the core forest areas, but they are going through forest and reserve areas. And the wildlife underpasses, even though it's great, the animals might still sometimes use this highway.
Use.
So that way I think it's a great initiative. It's a great way for people to go ahead and have like a better structure in at least one, telling people that because it's all red marked, this is like a wildlife area where you need to slow down, and secondly, that it naturally slows people down if people don't want to take that effort to slow down. So it automatically also puts both things into check. So that I think is a great initiative.
Mm. These I like how they did this for the entire stretch and not just one speed bump and be done with it. It's like a continuous series of speed bumps, very in your face. But again, this is like that same a similar solution as those concrete blocks in the ocean, right? It's brute force. You have to do it, and I think that's the default with when we have to make something have to make ourselves listen to something, our own advices. It has to be like brute force, otherwise we'll find a way around it, I mean, and we still might, there is, I can see like a pavement kind of area, or like a gutter kind of area, um, on the sides of these roads, and people might try to drive in that area, how we drive across speed bump, if there is a speed bump there. Because at the end, I can imagine this being very annoying, like sitting in a car, or especially like a for a trucker where there is less number of shock absorptions and things like that. It would be very annoying for them to drive through this stretch. I can also imagine that. So I don't know if it means something, but yeah, that's my
But
thought
I
there.
think, I mean, they need to be grateful that they have this path to go through, because I think this is one of the main problems with a lot of these roads that are not in the forest area but are just adjoining the forest area or going through other forest areas. So these kind of initiatives are important to brute force is one thing. Obviously there are people who are seeing the red markings and they know that they have to slow down, but the people who are not ready to slow down, then obviously you need to, take care of this brute force. And there are a lot of people everywhere that are in too much of a hurry and they're not going to slow down. So we need to see obviously how effective this road is, how great this road is doing, and then maybe apply to all other national parks in India, and
Mm,
surrounding areas wherever there is threat to the animals, especially where I think elephant crossings happen. These would be great, like wherever these animal crossings are happening, that people slow down, take their time, process, see that you prioritize the animal, and then you go slowly once the animal is safe.
mm, mm. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of those, again, a very good initiative. Simple, not very. I wouldn't imagine very costly. It would be costly to maintain and things like that, but not super super costly as building like an underpass or an overbridge or something like that. But um, hopefully this is as effective to discourage the kind of behavior it needs to discourage as well. Um,
Yeah.
cool, very very cool update. Um, I can quickly cover the Javan rhino translocation news, and then we can slowly wrap up today's show.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Indonesia's first Javan rhino translocation ends in death in conservation setback. Indonesia's initial attempt to translocate Javan rhino has failed. The Musofa, which was the name of this rhino, dying days after being moved to a protected facility in Ujung Kulong National Park. Necropsy revealed pre existing health issues, specifically a severe parasitic infection, as the cause of death, though the link to the relocation is questioned. The translocation aimed to bolster the critically endangered species genetic diversity, despite adhering to international conservation standards, including simulations and ethical reviews. Mustafa's conditions rapidly deteriorated past move, despite intensive veterinary intervention. Conservationists emphasize this setback shouldn't halt future translocation efforts, vital for a species threatened by dwindling numbers and limited genetic variation. So, again, this is like a lesson in conservation um, for the better, right? Like you I feel like this is but while it is a negative news, but it would be net positive for the conservation efforts of Javan rhinos going forward, because obviously these threats that they mention in this article, the dwindling numbers and the more importantly the limited uh, genetic variation that is, I think, very like
And I
even
think
more
this is,
important than like dwindling numbers.
yeah, and I think the genetic variation is a problem with a lot of rhinos across. We saw that the last northern white male rhino that had died in Africa.
Mm,
With rhinos, I think genetic variation, their pregnancies are long. Everything is a slow process with them, and by the time you
mm,
find out that their numbers are dwindling, it's already really late. So like people don't take those efforts from the starting that let's just protect these areas. And rhinos across the world are very susceptible to poaching, and they're also very susceptible to
mm,
changes like dehorning and other kind of things also. Even though it's great for the rhinos and it protects the rhinos, it also has an adverse impact on their health and how they perform. So rhinos are slower animals in general, with everything. So if they need to be protected, they need to be, um, it needs to be like I appreciate the efforts of translocating them, but this translocation seems to also take a lot of toll on them.
Mm, yeah, I don't know what the solution would be for genetic diversity. I am hoping they have tried some kind of IVF or freezing the male rhino's sperms or things like that. I don't know if there is a better solution which does not involve translocation, but obviously genetic like a low genetic diversity is something that conservationists, especially in a species which is dwindling in population, a low genetic diversity can be even more of a threat. Like, it can be the threat can be twofold, and that means that as the scientist has also said, like this is like a learning uh, experience for the conservationists and for the people um, working towards the conservation of these Javan rhinos. But and also a lesson to make sure from the next time onwards that this does not happen, or to find a solution which does not involve translocation. But very sad for the individual Javan rhino indeed, that it had to, you know, die in a after like a traumatic, what I would imagine is traumatic for them moving. Um, it might not be traumatic. We might be anthropomorphizing or projecting our own fears onto this rhino, but
No,
um,
I think translocation in general, I feel like rhinos are very susceptible to the smallest of changes. So we do not know how much translocation actually creates a problem for them. We do
mm,
it with a good intention. Like even with this rhino, it was trapped in this trap, and then they had taken the rhino from here. A lot of translocation projects across a lot of places with rhinos have actually failed. So it's not this just this project, but in general, there are translocation
oh
projects in
really?
different, yeah, there are translocation projects in different places where they try to get in one or two male rhinos, and then they get in a lot of female rhinos so that the male
Mm,
rhinos can impregnate the female rhinos, and they bring in the stronger gene so that there's that gene can be passed down. um, but but in general, I think rhino translocation is something that's trying to grow right now, because a lot of rhinos across the world are in a critically endangered place. um, but there are success stories, there are some success stories, but there are also some failure stories like this one. So we need to see if the rhinos that are translocated after this, under this project, they survive and they're actually able to thrive, which means that they're going to be Javan rhino offsprings. So that has to be the ultimate goal, to again populate and have more Javan rhinos. So the only way to do that when they're this critically endangered is to put them in a safe space and hope that they mate and hope that there are German rhinos. But we do not know uh, how and when these translocation efforts will prove to be fruitful.
yeah, and I think the discussion question here for us was translocating Mustafa worth the risk given the Javan rhino's precarious population and his outcome? I think, you know, given the genetic the limited genetic diversity and reducing population and all those other factors, it kind of was worth the risk, in my view at least, because you had to take that chance, and if it turned out differently, we would have had a different story to tell, and it would have been an overall positive story. So I would say it was, my view would be it was worth the risk, and these are trying times. Like, I don't know what the Javan rhino population is, but I would imagine it being um, very low, um, indeed. So it kind of makes sense that you you know have to make these extreme decisions. But for a species which is, yeah. Do you know, Meghna, how many Javan rhinos are there? I feel like it's somehow I feel like it's under 100
Let me just check real
individuals.
quickly. Oh, let me see.
Yeah,
Javan rhino
I somehow
population.
feel it is under 100 for some reason. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
76. It's
Yeah.
76
So,
individuals, and they're all living exclusively in Ujung Kulon National Park in Java, Indonesia, which is, I think, which is why they are trying so hard to translocate the rhinos and are trying to repopulate them, because they, uh, with the rhinos, even with 76, with their slow, gestation period, this
mm,
is actually going to be, the numbers are going to drop further if, and in these cases, that is why human intervention comes into play. But despite human intervention, we have seen that we can lose the last few rhinos that are alive. Um, so we need to take those efforts, which is why they're saying that even though to translocation failed, they need to try again and again, because that is the only hope. They have only 76 individuals and all in that national park, and there's no other way to monitor and know. And all these rhinos everywhere across the world have the same stresses, which is poaching. Everywhere across
poaching.
the world,
Yeah.
even now, rhinos are being poached for their horns exclusively, and so they face that poaching stress across the world.
And this is from um, IUCN. So the latest survey, I think it's even a little bit more dire. So LSS and B Talukdar. Uh, this was last done in 2020. This study. I think it says this is from IUCN. It says number of mature individuals as 18, and total population of largest subpopulation being 50. So, yeah, between severely threatened, critically endangered on the IUCN red list. So, um, we have a huge chance of um, missing out on yet another rhino species. Very close to it, at least. Um, I don't know if efforts have been made to make them breed in captivity, but a lot of species are also very sensitive to be bred in captivity. They can't breed in captivity, which is doubly sad. I don't know if it's the case with these rhinos, but if it is, then it's like, problem after problem after problem.
Yeah, I think there are positive stories as well. Like in Dudhwa National Park in India, there was a rhino translocation project which has been successful. They brought in males and females, and then they've swapped the males and I think females for more genetic diversity.
Mm,
And that has worked out really well. And I think there even is tourism there, where you can actually, there's a different, not enclosure, but a huge habitat space that has been reserved for the rhinos, and you can actually do the safaris and the through that rhino area as well. So there are certain rhino translocation projects that are successful as well. Some rhino translocation projects, unfortunately, do not end in the kind of result that people are looking for. But I don't think we can stop, because if there are only around 50 individuals to 75 individuals as well,
mm.
that is a really
That
dire
is
number.
dangerously low. Like 75 individuals might be 75, um more than 75 humans living in our building or in our apartment, more than 75 humans living. It's dangerously low. um yeah, can't even imagine like an entire species being reduced down to these numbers, because of these hunting pressures. And as I keep saying, that this wouldn't be a problem if there were less number of humans, but since we are more of us, we have to compromise on a lot of things, because there are so many of us. We can't make medicines from rhino horns or tiger claws or anything like that. We can't use them for our ritualistic purposes or whatever other reasons these things have a market for. If it were like 100,000 humans, like around the world, 1 lakh humans, 2 lakh humans, whatever, um, that would have been fine. This everything we could have done everything that we needed to do. Make medicines, this, that, and the population still would be stable and going because the demand would be much, much lower. But since we are 8 billion of us, it's nearly impossible to sustain that demand with a species, as Meghna mentioned, slow gestation period, a slower life cycle, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah. I'm just going to really quickly share this. Um, this was the positive story from India. So there was
Mm,
a translocation area, and this translocation area within Dudhwa was only around 27 square kilometers. And from there, this March, two
mm,
of the rhinos became free ranging within the core area of Dudhwa. So they translocated these
mm,
rhinos. So this was the opening, and the rhino running free. So there was a one male
mm.
and one male rhino. This is the whole video that was made. Beautiful forest. Yeah, so that is a feel good
Yeah,
story where
that's
rhinos were in a closed rehabilitation area, and now they're free ranging. So we're hoping even for the Javan rhinos, even though this translocation effort did not go well, that the future translocation efforts will be as successful as Dudhwa. And we hear positive stories about the Javan rhinos free ranging again after being translocated and in a controlled environment and making sure that their population is growing back.
yeah, that is the hope. Let's hope for that, and let's hope that this doesn't deter the conservationists and the government to invest even more time and effort into preserving this beautiful and very important species. But anyway, I think we should start wrapping up our show.
Yep. Just a small message for the viewers that I always do. Please be very aware of what ethical practices you get into. Don't get swayed by movies. Don't start buying snakes
Mhm.
just because you think they look cute in the movie. Don't go chasing seals just because you think that is a great practice. Go with ethical providers. Think if this is a good thing to do or not. And keep real life and real life separate. The only two animals you should or can have at home, usually, or that is the biggest or most common, are dogs and cats. Don't go chasing snakes.
Yeah, that I feel like it should be common sense, but apparently it's not. So we have to throw this message out there anyway. But as always, definitely, if you enjoyed this show and enjoy our content in general, do consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a thumbs up. That helps a lot, as we always say, with the reach and getting this message, a different kind of message, maybe, but a different narrative, different take on some of the issues that we as a society are facing collectively, and some solutions or some thoughts to go along with them as well. If you're listening to the recorded version of this podcast on your favorite podcasting platform, consider giving us a rating. I know it's monotonous to ask every time, but it really helps a lot by spreading this discourse, a different opinion and a different, discussion with more and more people. But other than that, that's it for today's show, and we'll see you next Sunday. Same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys, and Merry Christmas to all of you.
Yes. See, my tiger has a Christmas cap, and my zebra also has a
I noticed
Christmas cap.
that. I noticed
Yeah.
that. That's so cool. All
Okay.
right. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.